welcome to week 7 of Jets' final drive, even though it feels more like week 35. I don't even know. I'm your host, Jeane Coakley, alongside my friend and also sleep-deprived, Connor Hughes. And today we are joined by host of New York, New York, On the Ringer, Jastremski. And JJ, you're going to have to carry Connor and I because we're exhausted. Okay, just exhausted.
Well, you guys are giving me the intel of what to expect when I have children down the road and I have to be esteemed media professionals like the two of you guys. So this is something I'm looking forward to down the line. And Jeane, for what it's worth, I wish we could be in a better mood talking about the state of this football team after what we watched on Sunday.
Oh yeah, but before we get started, just a reminder that Jets Final Drive on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. JJ, like you just mentioned, last night, Sunday night, prime time, the Jets lose to the Steelers 37-15. It was their 4th straight loss and are now 2-5 on the season. All right, Connor, you heard Aaron Rodgers say after the game that the team lacked energy before the game and at halftime. So for a team in prime time, a must-win for the 2nd straight week, do you think the Jets have lost their locker room?
I don't know about losing the locker room, Jeane, but this was probably the most alarming aspect game I can imagine from the Jets. Because if you think about it, like, I understand what Aaron was saying. I understand what Davante Adams said. I understand what Garrett Wilson said. They're all stressing that it's just the little things with this team. It's the details. It's the fundamentals. If they can shore up those things, this team will be fine. But Jeane, it's not weeks 1, 2, or 3 anymore. We are closer to November 1st than we are January 1st. The Jets, or October 1st. The Jets have a brand new head coach. They have a brand new play caller. They have a brand new weapon in Adams. And it's the details, and it's the fundamentals, and it's the little things that have been plaguing this team week in and week out every single week of this season. And eventually you are, as Bill Belichick said, what your record says you are. This is not 1, 2, or 3 weeks. This isn't a blip on the radar. This is a consistent weekly issue for this team that is not getting rectified, and I'm not exactly sure what else they can do to rectify it. And then when you compound it all with the fact that they had no energy, Jeane, the entire reason why they fired Robert Saleh and they promoted Jeff Ulbrich to head coach, per Woody Johnson's old admission, was because they needed a spark. He said this was the most talented collection of players they've had in the 24 years he's overseen the team, and they needed a spark to get them going again. We are 2 weeks into the Jeff Ulbrich regime, and Aaron Rodgers, the most important player on this team, is saying that this team not only lacked energy at halftime, not only lacked energy after his interception, but they lacked energy before the game. A primetime Sunday night football against a premier team in the Pittsburgh Steelers with a chance to get your season back on the line. I mean, I don't know how much worse it can get, particularly at this moment.
Now, Jeff Ulbrich did speak just moments ago, and he did say he didn't necessarily agree with the pregame flatness and energy, but he did say he felt it at halftime. There was
players felt it though. That's the thing. But Jeane, like Jeff said, this, and I love Jeff. I do. This is not an indictment on Jeff. I do believe he's saying what he has to say because he can't come out and say yes, this was an issue. But you have a player that's saying it. I mean, it's just that matters. And Jeff's the same one. Where I asked him after the game, Jeane, because he said it's the little things. This is not, his quote was some variation of, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, but it was, this is not who we are. This is not the team that we are. Eventually, though, you are. And I said that to him. I was like, Jeff, eventually when it's the same things hurting you every single week, the reason you're on a 4-game losing streak, at what point does this become who you are? This is what the team is. Just, unfortunately, it's characteristics of a bad football team that are usually saved specifically for a bad football team. At what point is that who you are? You're just not good enough. And he said you can never admit that because when you do the season's loss, I agree that, but there is such overwhelming evidence right now pointing the Jets in that direction that it is wildly alarming considering the collection of talent the Jets have.
And JJ, this team is 2-5. But at the end of the day, there's still 10 games left, and the back end of their schedule was obviously a lot easier than the beginning part of the schedule. Is it too late, though, for the Jets to turn this season around?
So it's not too late, Jeane, from a standpoint of the Jets getting themselves in the AFC playoff conversation because the middle of the AFC is incredibly mediocre, and there are a whole lot of teams with a whole lot of questions. But the division is over by Halloween. That's all you need to know. The Jets already lost to Buffalo. Buffalo won again. The Jets lose again. If you think the Jets are catching the Buffalo Bills, you're as delusional as it gets. It's not happening. And here's my problem. Connor hit on the energy. I'd speak of the vibe. The vibe right now for this team is not good. You can try to sell it any which way you want. They gave up 150 yards on the ground to Najee Harris. They're a team that got torched in the second half by Russell Wilson, who was getting booed out of the building by the Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And listen, this was a 9-point Jet lead. This game turned on a dime the minute Aaron Rodgers threw an interception at the end of the first half. Then you have Garrett Wilson dropping a ball, which led to another turnover and led to more Steeler points. And, yeah, it's getting late early. We could talk about the schedule until we're blue in the face. The Jets are a 2-5 team, and the look and the vibe and the swagger that you thought you were going to have at the beginning of the year, it's not there. And it seems like they are soul-searching on a week-in and week-out basis. So I'm sorry. I need to see them rattle off a couple of wins in a row before my confidence is where it needs to be. But I can say confidently, they're dead for the division. The division is over, and it's not – your kids aren't even trick-or-treating yet.
And there are
we'll be at a game when they're trick-or-treating, okay? Thanks, JJ, for bringing that up. Mom guilt. Go, Connor.
Well, JJ's talking about the division, and he's right. I think it's going to be, barring an injury to Josh Allen or just a complete breakdown from the Buffalo Bills, it's going to be hard to catch that division. But even the playoffs now at 2-4, I mean, it's not 2-5. I'm sorry. It's hard to see them getting there. I mean, 9-8 is like the lowest common denominator of what you can have to potentially make the postseason is 9-8. Even then, you still might get in. You likely need 10 wins, but we'll just say, luckily, 9-8 gets the Jets in. It's been a weak conference to this point. That means they're going to go 7-3 the rest of the way. The Jets' schedule absolutely gets lighter because you do have games against the Seahawks, who I don't think are particularly good. You play the Colts, who I don't think are particularly good. You play the Patriots this weekend, who are absolutely not good. But there's still 2 games against the Dolphins, and Tua Tagovailoa is now back. You still have to play the Buffalo Bills again. You still have to play the Houston Texans. I think the Arizona Cardinals are a very talented football team. The Jets are playing them sooner rather than later. If this secondary doesn't shore up and get healthy, they might have an issue with that offense as well, especially the fact that that game is in Arizona. The math at the moment isn't mathing for a potential playoff run, let alone division. I mean, it's just, again, late early is a great way to describe this, but that's why this game against the Steelers was so imperative. We talked about that, Jeane. At the last Jets final drive, talked about it on a Jets class. The Bills game, when the Jets lost to the Bills, that wasn't the one I was alarmed with. It was this Steelers game. This was the one they had to have. 3-4 is so different than 2-5. At 2-5, the margin for error is gone, and the Jets are still trying to find their way without any semblance of an identity. Injuries now on the defense that are mounting. A head coach that's trying to figure out how to be a defensive coordinator too. A play caller that seems to have regressed. There are issues on this team right now, and it's compounding, and it's getting worse, and it's not necessarily getting any better.
And kind of let's talk about the issues on offense. And Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he has thrown 6 interceptions in his last 3 games. Now, granted, some of them were not his fault. But are you surprised at how he's playing, especially now that he has Davante? And I know, listen, everybody says it was chemistry. They know each other so well. But this was Davante's first game back. Are you surprised at how many interceptions Rodgers has thrown?
It's not just the interceptions, Jeane. Look, they're gonna happen. Interceptions are something with a quarterback that I rarely put on him. I mean, because you can look some of those. The one that he threw in the direction of Garrett Wilson.
He rarely threw interceptions before.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you look at his number. I have to look at them specifically, but he hasn't thrown the season before he joined the Jets. I think he threw 12 interceptions. Before that, he hadn't thrown more than 5 in a season since like 2015 or some absurd number like that. Like, he doesn't throw interceptions, but you look at some of the ones that he's had. Mike Williams infamously wasn't on the red line. There was kind of like a drop miscommunication, tip ball drill in the 49er game. There was the obvious drop from Garrett Wilson where it just bounced off his chest and went into the air. Those are 3 drops right there, or 3 interceptions right there that you can pretty much throw out the window. My biggest concern with Aaron Rodgers at the moment is that he's missing throws, missing reads, guys that are wide open. The infamous red line play with Mike Williams. Breece Hall is wide open underneath on a 3rd and 16 that he's probably going to get the first down knowing what Breece Hall can do with the ball in his hands. But worst case scenario, you're talking about a guy that's at least going to set you up with a 4th and very, very manageable. The interception last night, not the drop by Garrett Wilson, the other one intended for Garrett Wilson was into like triple coverage. He has Davante Adams wide open underneath. There's miscommunications. There's misreads. Those are the things that Aaron Rodgers didn't do. And I don't know if this is an age thing. I don't know. I mean, I still think he can absolutely play quarterback, but maybe he's more top 15 to 18 in the NFL and not necessarily top 5 or top 3 in the NFL anymore. Maybe that's a problem that they're dealing with. I don't know if this is still him working his way back from that Achilles injury. That is a legitimate injury that is very hard. We saw clips of people posting him in training camp where it looked like maybe in individual drills he was running a little bit more, not totally trusting that calf. Maybe some of that's there, and that's why the Jets aren't stretching the field, because that's another thing that Jeff Ulbrich said. They need to get explosives back. That's not happening. I mean, there is so much talent on the Jets offense, and this can go one of two ways. Either the players aren't as good as we believe they are. I don't think that's it. Or something just isn't working. And right now under center, something just seems off with Aaron Rodgers. And that to me is troubling and alarming, because I don't necessarily know how you fix that.
I mean, the thing is that we see glimmer of hope, and we see the glimmer of the possibility of this team. That drive they had were Breece Hall. And you saw what Davante Adams did on the field. He opened up space for Garrett. He opened up space. What was your impressions of Davante Adams as his first time as a Jet?
I don't think he looked like Davante Adams.
You saw glimpses of what could happen, or was that just a flash in the pan?
Yeah, I mean, your glass is half full. I mean, I give you credit for that, but I mean, I don't know, Jeanette. I mean, look, here's what I look at this Jets offense, and I think what's probably the most puzzling and the most frustrating and the most surprising and the most like I just can't piece all of it together is that, and last week was probably the best we thought they looked. And they scored, 20 points, and 7 of that came on a Hail Mary where the Bills just rushed 2 guys. Like, that's a 13-point game. I mean, they're averaging, I got to go look specifically at the numbers. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do it. They're averaging about the same, if not worse, points per game than they were a year ago with Zach Wilson. Like there are so many things right now that are just like, yeah, Davante Adams was out there. Yeah, I mean, there were some plays that were there that he missed. The one time that he tripped when he was open over the middle. He broke in when Aaron Rodgers threw an out route or an out curl on the first play of the game. But the thing with Davante Adams is when you look at the analytics, and Seth Walder, who used to cover the Jets and now works for ESPN and is big into the numbers, when you look analytically at the GPS numbers and everything like that with Davante Adams, there has been a decline in what he can do. Now, he's still a very, very productive receiver because he is fundamentally sound. He is technically sound. He's going to be exactly where he needs to be when he's going to be there. But some of his numbers that he compiled with the Raiders, a lot of that's because of how often they were throwing the ball. He's not the player he was with the Packers. He can still be productive, but if you look at him as this offensive savior, I don't necessarily know if that is him. I just don't see that anymore. The player is Garrett Wilson. He's their dynamic presence. He's the one that really needs to get going. But Adams, yeah, I mean, he's out there. I'm sure he'll get better the more he plays. But it's just, I don't know. I don't think this is like a great Adams was out there. The Jets are fine. Everything's. I don't see it as that at all.
All right, JJ, we just heard Connor talking about Aaron Rodgers and the offense. I'm going to ask you about this Jets defense because it's gotten bitten by the injury bug recently. I mean, their secondary was depleted. They're without Chuck Clark, Michael Carter II, DJ Reed, but Tony Adams, Ashton Davis got injured during the Jets Sunday night matchup. But the Jets finally worked out a deal with Hasson Reddick. But before we get to that, what are your thoughts on this Jets defense?
I'm very underwhelmed. I mean, let's call like it is, Jeane. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not a great offensive team. They're getting booed out of the building in the first half of that game, and they get absolutely torched. And my biggest issue from a Jet defensive standpoint is we talk about this, I feel like week in and week out, they can't stop the run. And until they go and show consistently that they can go and stop the run, they're going to be exploited. They're going to be picked on. And I understand yesterday you saw issues with George Pickens, which would make sense. But then why wouldn't you have Sauce Gardner shadowing George Pickens for all moments of this game? And I don't think Sauce had his best game of the year. I think most of the metrics would kind of point to him not having his best game of the year. But when you got the issues they have in the secondary without DJ Reed, without Michael Carter, you got to make some adjustments. But I think the biggest reason they're having the struggles they're having is the fact that week in and week out, they don't stop the run. You don't stop the run, you're not going to have defensive success.
And I don't even look at that, Jay. You're right. I mean, there's an issue with stopping the run, but that's always going to be an issue with this Jets defense because they are built as a unit that wants agility and quickness. And sometimes when you want agility and quickness up front on the defensive line, you're going to forego some of that beef you need to block the run. The biggest issue I have with the Jets defense right now, and I don't think it's completely tied entirely to the injuries and all that stuff, but the last 2 weeks, when the Jets fired Robert Saleh, they didn't promote Jeff Ulbrich and then also promote somebody else to be their interim defensive coordinator. You essentially took all of the responsibilities that Robert Saleh had as a head coach, gave them to Jeff Ulbrich while also still keeping him as the defensive coordinator. That is so much to put on the plate of somebody with head coaching experience, let alone somebody who has no head coaching experience, is a young coach in the NFL anyway, is doing this for the very first time, doing this on the fly where he hasn't had any offseason to prepare for this. He's been a defensive coordinator, now he's the head coach. And it's almost like when the Jets fired Robert Saleh, they had their issues on offense. But by firing Saleh, they have now created a new slew of issues on defense because you just, I don't know, there's so much on the plate. Ultimately, what I think we're going to see is Jeff's going to give up some of the play calling duties, whether it's going to go to White Cotton or Ruttenberger or whoever they're going to give it to. I do think it's going to have to change. Something's going to need to adjust there because I think one of the biggest reasons the defense is struggling right now is that. There's too much on Jeff Ulbrich's plate at the moment.
I 100% agree with that one, Connor. Like you said, he became a head coach and defensive coordinator all in a week. All right, JJ, let's talk about Hasson Reddick. He's back in the building. Do you think he is a huge impact and will help this defense immediately?
Well, Jeane can't hurt. We know what his resume is as a player. I mean, this is a guy who was the best defensive player on the field, 2 years ago when the Philadelphia Eagles destroyed the San Francisco 49ers in an NFC title game. But I have serious questions about what kind of shape Hasson Reddick is going to be in. I mean, we're talking about an NFL player showing up in the middle of the year, trying to get acclimated with a new team. You know, Connor, this is uncharted territory. These are uncharted waters for a whole lot of guys. You don't see this often. So in theory, yes, Hasson Reddick is a good player. Yes, he should help their pass rush. Yes, he should help their defense. But is Hasson Reddick going to be the version of the player we saw 2 years ago with everything that has unfolded here over the last few weeks? I'm not holding my breath that he's going to show up and have 3 sacks in his first game. I just think it's asking a lot. I mean, that's just reasonable timeline, expectation, what have you. Guys don't show up in week 8. They don't show up for, training camp and preseason, everything that we have, and all of a sudden hit the ground running. It's asking a lot.
And Connor, you just talked about stopping the run. Hasson Reddick isn't known for stopping the run.
No, but I think he will probably shore up some of the issues that we saw from the Jets and the Steelers a night ago or last night. I mean, because you saw Russell Wilson was just throwing prayer balls to George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth, and these guys were pulling him down. I mean, we know, Jeane, what the Jets defense wants to do because we've seen it for the years that Jeff Ulbrich has been this team's defensive coordinator. They want to trot out 4 dominant pass rushers up front, create pressure with their 4, and then drop the rest back. That's what they want to do. That's why you've seen during the years before this year under Jeff Ulbrich, the Jets have never rushed never blitzed, more than 18 or 19% of the time, according to ESPN stats and information. That number was up to 30% going into that Steelers game. They don't have Bryce Huff anymore. They do not have John Franklin Myers anymore. They don't have the ability to just rush 4 and create a consistent pressure. So Ulbrich had to adapt to survive, and he started blitzing. That was fine when you had DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter, Tony Adams, and Chuck Clark, and your full complement of guys in the secondary because they could go man up on the outside, everyone on their own island, and have success. With DJ Reed now down for a foreseeable amount of time, with Michael Carter down, with Chuck Clark down, with Tony Adams now down, and guys like Oliver having to step in, guys off the practice squad having to step in, Sauce Gardner really being your only staple there in the secondary, they can no longer keep blitzing to create a pressure because those guys on the outside, like we saw multiple times, the play that Pickens made up the right sideline, that was an all-out cover 0 blitz from the Jets. They just threw it up in one-on-one coverage. DJ Reed probably swats that one away. Instead, it's a big first down. The one to Freiermuth, that's probably something swatted away if the Jets have their full complement of guys in the secondary back there. Instead, it's a big completion. What Hasson Reddick should theoretically allow the Jets to do, even immediately, even if he's not in complete football shape, is give them a situational pass rusher on the outside on 3rd down where the Jets, with him on one side, Quinnen Williams in the middle, maybe Michael Clemens or Javon Kinlaw, and then Will McDonald, who's got his 8 sacks this year. That front four should theoretically be able to get a pressure and a push just themselves, which will allow the Jets to keep extra guys in the secondary, which theoretically, assuming Reddick is still at least able to create some kind of pressure, that will allow them to get back to their style of defense that can now protect their secondary, knowing their front can get home.
All right, guys, so we hit on offense. We hit on defense. We might as well just hit on the special teams, okay? Because Greg Zuerlein had an extra point and a field goal blocked. Xavier Gipson muffed a punt that luckily was not recovered by the Steelers. JJ, do the Jets need to make some changes on special teams?
You know, it's funny, Jeane, there are so many issues plaguing the team. We talked about the Rodgers interception. We talk about the run defense. The kicker obviously has gotten a lot of attention, and I think justifiably so. I mean, you think about the Buffalo game a few weeks ago, it was incredibly costly. The Denver game, not as much. To me, there were other problems in that game, but Zuerlein missed a big kick. I, at the very least, am bringing some competition in here for Zuerlein. I know he's been a good Jet. I know he's had some good years, but these kickers to me are like relief pitchers. They lose it fast, and look at those numbers right there. 8 of 13, getting field goals blocked. It's unacceptable, and you know, when it rains, it pours. That, to me, is kind of where you're at from a Jet standpoint, where you have issues offensively. You have issues defensively. And then to make matters worse, you can't have muff punts. You can't have missed field goals or blocked field goals. And we're talking about a sloppy football team that is not a well-oiled machine at the moment. I keep talking about vibe and the vibe being off. The vibe is off basically on all 3 facets of the game. And you guys hit on it. Jeff Ulbricht's in a really tough spot. He's the coach, interim, 2 weeks. You got all these just moments of crisis and turbulence, and you got to deal with it. It's going to take some brave soul searching to get the Jets out of the rut that they're in.
It's when it rains, it pours, and that's what's happening. That kick, Jeane, I mean, we forget he had an extra point blocked as well. It was just called back because I think there was a leverage call or something like that the Steelers were arguing, believing that was nothing. The kick that was blocked, that was a low kick. It wasn't like the Steelers had some crazy guy come flying around the edge. Someone missed a blocking assignment in the middle. It was just a line drive kick on a pretty much a pitch shot that was snapped away. And like JJ said, it's the best comparison. Connor Rogers made this as well. Kickers are relief pitchers. They're good until they're not. And this is the case with Greg Zuerlein. But I think that right now this is so far down on the totem pole of problems with the Jets because, yeah, I mean, look, we can make the argument of do they beat the Broncos if Greg Zuerlein makes the kick? I mean, those were ridiculously hard conditions to kick in that situation with the weather and all that other crap. But, yeah, probably. I mean, they certainly, maybe the game changes a bit if he's able to connect that and keep it a one-possession game and things like that against the Broncos, against the Steelers last night. But the biggest issue I still have with this team, and it's the issue that I had when Robert Saleh was the team head's coach, and it has not changed in any way, shape, or form with Jeff Ulbrich, is that the offense right now is just not good enough. And it blows my mind because you look at the roster, and it is so ridiculously talented. All-pro in Tyron Smith up front, a legitimate stud starter that you believe in John Simpson. Joe Tippmann, someone you invested a significant draft resource in. Elijah Vera-Tucker, who everyone within the Jets building keeps telling us has all-pro potential. Morgan Moses, somebody who is a top 5 right tackle in the NFL. You are now literally running 4 deep at receiver with an all-pro in Davante Adams, a potential all-pro in Garrett Wilson. Allen Lazard is your 4, and Mike Williams is your 3 or 4, however you want to mix it in. Tyler Conklin's there, 2 running backs, a 4-time MVP at quarterback, and you still can't score more than 15 points? You still can't eclipse 20 unless you get a Hail Mary? Like, I can't. 9 against the Broncos? Like, I can't. It's at some point, and I made this point earlier in the show, but it just rings true, and it's what I'm going to keep hammering on because it's the truth. Eventually, guys, you are what your record says you are. It doesn't matter how good you think the offense is or how talented the offense is. It doesn't matter all the studs that they've got on the defensive side of the ball. It doesn't matter if you change a kicker or you bring in a new kicker. How many personnel adjustments do you need to make from a group that began the season with Super Bowl aspirations? Seriously, like I've been banging the drum this entire time. I believe the Jets are one of the 5 most talented teams in the entire NFL. Not division, not conference, not everywhere. I think they're one of the 5 most talented. Something is just off. And it was Damian Wood. He made this point on ESPN today. I saw Brian Costello tweeted on it. I thought it was true. The Jets right now have a roster. They don't have a team. They don't have guys that are playing for each other. They don't have guys that are playing for one. Not everyone's doing their 111th. It's just everyone's out there trying to. It's like you're playing Madden, and you just put these guys all together, and you're going out there and you're relying on their overalls to beat everybody. I thought their scheme took a step back. Players have taken a step back, and I don't know. I throw in energy now into the mix as well, but they are resembling so many qualities of a bad football team. And I do still think they're gonna run the Patriots out of their own building because the Patriots are a disaster. But if they then can't beat the Texans on Halloween, the scariest thing won't be the costumes you see in the stands. Pun intended, dad joke, I know. But like, it's going to be the state of this team at 3-6. They've done everything they can. They added the Pro Bowl wide receiver. They've added the pass rusher. They've changed the play caller. They've changed the head coach. There's nothing left to do other than, guys, go win some football games. Win enough, like fix the little things. Because again, if we're talking about this after the first quarter of the season, fine. 2 weeks of the season, fine. It's week 7. We're through week 7. We're a game away from week 8. Like, this shouldn't be happening anymore. And for so many of these guys too, last point on this, I'm going to get a text from Jeff about you talking too long, but this is the truth. Like, these guys have all also been in the same scheme now 2 years in a row. Like, this is still, like, I know there's new play caller in Todd Downing. It's the same scheme for 2 straight years. And like, the little things shouldn't be problems anymore. I understand why Jet fans are so wildly disappointed. I do. I completely and totally understand it, because it's just, you finally thought you were going to see the end. The playoff drought was going to end. You were going to have a real good football team you were going to feel good about. And still, football just seems so hard for the Jets. It does. It just feels so hard every single week, and it shouldn't with the talent they have on the field.
Connor has way too much caffeine in him, JJ. I apologize.
I like it. I like fired up Connor. I'm all about it.
Talk about some tricks and some treats on Halloween. Connor just said you are who your record are. Well, JJ, I'm going to ask you this, because the Chiefs are 6-0, all right? Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is having an off year. He's thrown 8 interceptions and only 6 touchdowns. Now, in comparison, Rodgers has 10 TDs and 7 interceptions. So are the Chiefs really that good? I mean, why have the Chiefs been able to win?
Defense. I'll say it one more time today. Defense and combined with coaching. You know what? When you have a Hall of Fame coach in Andy Reid, he finds ways to make it work. They've lost Isaiah Pacheco. They've lost Rashee Rice. And they find ways to win. Defensively, Spagnuolo is coaching unbelievably well. He's one of the premier defensive coordinators of the last 20 years. He forced Brock Purdy into 3 interceptions. And I'm allowing the two of you guys to smack me across the head if I ever bet against Kansas City, against the San Francisco 49ers ever again. How did I do that yesterday?
Did you really?
Yeah, exactly. So next time you see me and there's a Niners-Chiefs game, you know, you can give me a friendly nudge across my head saying, don't bet against the Chiefs anymore, JJ. You're not allowed.
This is how. Right there. JJ said it. It's this guy. Steve Spagnuolo. That's how. You want to know why the Chiefs are so good? It's that guy. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. Yeah, I mean, you're right.
I know, but okay.
The one
the
consistent
Jets have
that
had
the
a really good defensive coordinator
years.
and a good defense.
He did it against the Patriots. He's been doing it for as long as he is a hell of a football coach. He really is. And it's one thing when you can trot out what a guy who will probably go down as the most talented quarterback to ever play in the NFL and Patrick Mahomes, and they still have weapons. The guys are going to get healthy and they're going to get back in there. It would not surprise me in the slightest, by the way, if the Giants receiver Darius Slayton ends up being a receiver for the Chiefs and making huge plays in the playoffs this year. But that defense is going to ball out year after year after year. The Chiefs invested the financial resources on that side of the ball, and it has made such a substantial difference for them, because every single game, you don't need Patrick Mahomes to be Superman. He'll still make Superman plays. He certainly did it with that run at the sideline, lowering his shoulder to get into the end zone. But this team in the Chiefs, every week they're going to have a chance. They're going to have a chance because of that defense.
All right, JJ,
Vibe, Jeane.
I'm giving you
Vibe, Jeane.
plan. It's on you, JJ.
My point on
the last thing. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. Go.
No, I appreciate that. I interrupted you. The vibe. The Chiefs have a vibe. They have a winning culture. You asked what the difference is between the Jets and the Chiefs. The Chiefs expect to win. They lose guys. They keep churning. They know their coaching is going to be there. They know their leadership is going to be there. They have one of, if not the best culture in the entire NFL. And that's something the Jets have been searching for. And, oh, by the way, are still searching for. And that's one of the main reasons why they're 2-5.
And JJ, you hit it right on the head. It's not just the vibe, like where you feel good. It almost feels like, and maybe this is because of the I say culture of losing, not that it's like bad people or bad coaches or bad man. I don't mean it like that. I mean it like the Jets have just had so many tough losses and such a just endless string of losing over the last 13 years, even ever since Robert Saleh came in. I know a lot of the guys that were with Adam Gase and Mike McCagnon are gone, but talking about 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and now 2024, when you have so many players that are just accustomed to it not working, that even when you're in a situation where you're leading like you are and like the Jets were 15-3 and 15-6, even when you're in that situation, when you have such a history of losing, it's almost like guys end up sitting there in those situations like, how are we going to blow it here? You know what I mean? And it'll be situations where it's like they make plays to lose the game instead of making plays to win the game. And Aaron Rodgers said this after the game as well. You need culture changers in the locker room. You need winning players in the locker room that just know one way. Unfortunately, the majority of the players in the Jets locker room right now, they're accustomed to losing. Even if you go back to guys like Davante Adams, who they added, who had so much success with Aaron Rodgers, he's coming off back-to-back losing seasons with the Raiders. Like, this is just a situation now where I've brought it up to a number of players in the locker room, and they say the right thing, but when you pose the question to them, you can see the look in their eyes, you can see the look on their faces where it is absolutely in the back of their mind of the dreaded, quote, here we go again. That it's like, yeah, we've got the talent, yeah, we've got the players, but here we go again. It's happening again. We're losing again. Yeah, we're up now, but we're going to find a way to blow this one. And it is so hard to break that. When that wheel's in motion, to break that wheel, it is so ridiculously hard. And you worry at the point of this season right now, at 2-5, with the way some of these losses are happening to the Jets right now, whether it was gut-wrenching against the Broncos, the tight games where the quarterback made the mistake against the Vikings and the Buffalo Bills. Now the blowout to the Steelers. It's like they're finding new ways to lose. It's not one reason. Little things aside, it's not one reason. It's the missed field goal. It's the interception, bad throw by Aaron Rodgers. It's the bad route by Mike Williams. Now it's the defense that can't make a play, the offense that's struggling again. It's so many different things every single time that they can't say like, oh, just fix this and we'll be fine. That's when things start to spiral. And again, they can maybe a butt kicking of the Patriots can right this ship, and then they come back against the Texans, they get that one too, and then the Jets are off and running against the easier portion of their schedule where they're going to play the Colts, they're going to play teams like that. But I worry that it's trending that way and not trending that way.
JJ, I said you got the last word, but Connor gets it because again he's hyped up on.
No, you can go now, JJ. Sorry, but I love that point he made. Like the point he made is perfect.
And I picked my kids up, so I got to wrap this. All right, and like you said, Connor, the best way to fix things, a 4-game losing streak, is to win, and they have the perfect opportunity to do it because they're playing the 1-6 Patriots on Sunday, a 1 p.m. game. Praise the Lord, thank you. Oh, then they make a quick turnaround again, like you said. They play the Texans on Halloween. Hopefully, there's more treats than tricks. All right, so thank you guys all for joining us on this episode of Jets Final Drive. Again, listen to Jets Final Drive on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. For Connor, Hughes, and JJ, hey, appreciate you jumping on, JJ. I know you're in LA and doing all your other stuff down there. I'm Jeane Coakley. See you next Monday to recap the Jets-Patriots matchup.